Trying to manage tasks in Obsidian is like using a Swiss Army knife as a hammer. It kind of works, but it's clunky, awkward, and you're always wishing for the real tool. And as for reminders, they are nowhere to be found. But the TaskNotes plugin changes everything, turning chaos into clarity. So in this video, I'm going to show you a beginner-friendly way to make task management in Obsidian both visual and effortless with just one plugin. By the end of this video, we will know exactly how to turn Obsidian into a task manager we actually enjoy using, without leaving Markdown. We will cover everything from quick natural language task creation to visual Kanban boards, time management, and more, all powered by a single plugin. We will install and configure TaskNotes together and walk through how to create tasks with natural language, set up recurring to-dos, use inline tasks right inside our notes, organize everything in Kanban boards and calendar views, even with integration to our external calendar, track time and stay focused with a built-in Pomodoro timer, and navigate it all through custom views and quick commands. I have been thinking about a way to create a bullet journal in Obsidian, and I think this plugin can help with that. I will let you know. To refresh my bullet journaling know-how, I recently took this short class on Skillshare, the sponsor of today's video. Among the many classes, there are quite a few focused on task management, including Rich Armstrong's on bullet journaling, get productive with your notebook. Although this focuses on a paper-based solution, I believe that the principles and benefits can also be applied to Obsidian. And if you could not care less about journaling or task management, you will definitely find other interesting topics on Skillshare, from AI to photography and productivity, and pretty much anything in between. They even cover artistic topics for those of us who want to create our own crafts and perhaps even actual art. Personally, I have no talent, but I'm sure many of you do and would enjoy these courses. If you're still uncertain, I have great news for you. The first 500 people to use my link in the description or scan the QR code will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. I recommend getting started today. Before we can start using TaskNotes, we need to install and configure it properly. The basic setup is quick, but since this is a feature-rich plugin, there are quite a few settings worth exploring. We head into the Community Plugins tab and search for TaskNotes. We click Install and then Enable. Once the plugin is active, we open the Settings panel. The configuration tabs are grouped by feature, making them less overwhelming than a long single list. We will go through them one by one so we understand what each option does before we start using the plugin. Let's take a closer look at the first section in the settings, Task Defaults. We can set a default folder where new tasks will be created. This keeps our tasks organized without having to choose a location each and every time. For this tutorial, we will stick to the default location. We can save task notes in any folder. To identify them, the plugin uses tags. Here, we define the tag that marks a note as a task file. By default, this is task. If we want to exclude entire folders from the notes view, we can define them here. This is useful for hiding templates, archives, or any irrelevant content. When the option Store Title exclusively in File Name is enabled, task titles are not stored in the front matter. It makes file names cleaner, but comes with limitations for templates and mixed task formats. Being able to use natural language for creating tasks is one of this plugin's many cool features. Enabling this lets us write tasks like call John tomorrow at 3 p.m. #work and have everything passed automatically. We will see this in action later. Related to this, we can choose whether any mentioned days or dates are used by the plugin as a task's scheduled date or due date by default. By default, this is on, which means it will be used as scheduled date. Personally, I prefer to turn it off and use it as a due date. Next, we set the default status and priority for newly created tasks. We can pick values from the respective drop-down menus. We will see in a moment how we can modify these default values and add new ones. With the next three options, we can pre-fill tasks with default contexts like work or personal, tags like urgent, and even assign them to specific projects automatically. If we want to use the time management feature, we can also define a default estimated task duration. This helps with planning and time tracking. If most of our tasks repeat, we can define a default recurrence pattern like daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly right here. And here, we can preset the default due or scheduled dates if they are not provided during task creation. The last option on this tab is about a task's body template. We can enable this if we want to pre-fill the content of each task using a markdown template. To do so, we need to create a template and insert the path to it. Inside the template, we can work with a list of variables like title, due date, or tags, and more to populate the task body dynamically. Let's move on to the Inline Tasks tab. This section defines how TaskNotes handles inline checkboxes in our notes. If we often write tasks directly inside meeting notes or daily pages, this is relevant for us. With the Task Link Overlay option enabled, regular wiki links to tasks are turned into rich, interactive task cards in preview mode. It's much more visual than plain links, as we are going to see later. Enabling Instant Task Convert adds a Convert to Task Note button next to every regular Markdown checkbox. We can click it to turn the item into a full task note. When Use Task Defaults on Instant Convert is turned on, converted checkboxes will use all the defaults we just configured, like default folder, tags, status, and so on. And down here, we can define an inline task folder where converted inline tasks are stored. Using the variable current node path keeps them next to the original node by default. At the bottom, there's a quick summary of what inline tasks can do. This section bridges simple checkboxes with the full power of the plugin. TaskNotes comes with a full-featured calendar that integrates directly with our tasks. The first section of the Calendar tab is all about the calendar view. We can choose whether the calendar opens by default in month, week, day, custom days, or week view. If we select a custom view, this slider lets us choose how many days are shown, anywhere from 2 to 10. We can set which day appears first in the week view. Monday is a standard value, but we can change it to any other day. These two toggles help personalize our calendar layout. We can show or hide weekends and ISO week numbers depending on our preferences. Next, we have time settings, starting with an option to choose between 12-hour and 24-hour time display. We can control how time is segmented and when our days start and end in day-week view. For example, 30-minute slots starting at 9 a.m. and ending at 6 p.m. By default, it will show all 24 hours of a day. The initial scroll time field defines where the calendar scrolls to when opened. A good place to set this is our usual start of daytime. In the default event visibility section, we define which event types shall be visible by default when opening the plugin's advanced calendar view: scheduled tasks, due dates, time entries, recurring tasks, and events from third-party calendars. With time blocking enabled, we get the option to use it in our daily notes. And if we opt to show time blocks from daily notes, we can visually plan our day right inside the calendar. The options under Calendar Behavior fine-tune how the calendar looks, showing the current time, live selection, previews, and highlighting today's color. The last section on this tab is all about integrating third-party calendars. We can subscribe to external calendar feeds in ICS format. We can set a sync interval and have the option to refresh all subscriptions manually. Note that this is a one-way sync from our calendar to Obsidian. Any changes we make in Obsidian will not be sent back to calendars unless we actively send a task to the calendar. These options let us define where and how notes from calendar events are created, especially useful for turning meeting events into structured notes. Once again, we can create a template for that. The Field Mapping tab is where we configure how TaskNotes reads and writes data into our notes. If we're using front matter or integrating tasks with other tools, This is where we can fully customize the field names. Each line in this table maps a TaskNotes field to a front matter property. For example, the title of a task is written to a property called title, and its due date to a field called due. We can rename any of these to match whatever front matter schema we are using. It's important to know that TaskNotes will both read and write these fields. Changing them after tasks have already been created may break things, so we should only modify them early on. And if anything goes wrong, there is always a red reset button at the bottom to restore the default field names instantly. Task statuses and priorities are fully customizable in TaskNotes. This lets us tailor the plugin to our workflow. First, let's see the task statuses. The default values are none, open, in progress, and done. These statuses determine how the system treats and displays the tasks in the different views. We can define the internal value, the display label we want to see in the user interface, a color, and whether that status counts as completed. We need to have at least one status that is completed. The order of status values also matters. We can arrange the order by dragging the statuses. Next, we can customize our task priorities in much the same way. Each priority has a value, display label, color, and a numeric weight for sorting. Higher weight is higher up the list. So a task marked as high with weight 3 will show up above normal and low tasks in most views. Just like statuses, we can create our own priorities if we need more granularity in our system. The TaskNotes plugin includes a built-in Pomodoro timer with automation and tracking features. In the plugin settings, we can fine-tune everything from session lengths to audio notifications. First, we define the length of our focus sessions and breaks. The default is the classic Pomodoro setup: 25 minutes of work, followed by 5-minute short break and a 15-minute long break. Here we can set how many Pomodoro rounds it takes before triggering a long break. 4 is a common setting. The auto start toggle defines if the flow between work and break sessions shall be continued automatically. When enabled, we don't have to click start every time. We can receive visual and sound alerts when a session ends. This is great for staying focused and not getting distracted by the timer. By adjusting the sound volume, we can make sure that we do not miss these notifications. We can choose where to store Pomodoro session data, either inside the plugin's data file or in the Daily Notes front matter. The latter requires the Daily Notes core plugin to be installed and enabled. When auto-stop time tracking on completion is enabled, TaskNotes will stop time tracking as soon as we mark a task as done. And with Show Auto-Stop Notifications, we will get a small visual confirmation when the auto-stop action happens. If we find this too distracting, we can keep it disabled. The plugin comes with a tab for miscellaneous settings. These offer a few extra options to tweak how TaskNotes behaves and how much information we see in different views. If we enable Show Tracked Tasks in Status Bar, we will see these tasks in the status bar, obviously, at the bottom of Obsidian. It's great for keeping an eye on active timers. If we enable Show Project Subtasks widget, we get a collapsible widget in Project Notes that lists all related subtasks, giving us an overview of everything linked to that specific project. This setting prevents completed tasks from showing up in the overdue section of the agenda, even if their due date or schedule date has passed. To me, enabling it makes very good sense. Turning this last option on disables indexing of non-task nodes, which can help with performance in very large vaults. It also disables the Notes view and Notes display in the agenda view. One of the standout features of TaskNotes is its ability to create tasks using natural language. We can type something that feels like a sentence, and the plugin will extract everything it needs. With a bit of practice, this is probably the fastest way to create new tasks. Let's take a look at it. I created a new vault for this demo and installed only 3 community plugins: another quick switcher, style settings, and, of course, TaskNotes. I'm only mentioning this to emphasize that all the functionality we are going to see comes from the TaskNotes plugin. We start by opening the command palette, by default via the hotkey Ctrl and P, and selecting the command TaskNotes Create New Task. Alternatively, we can already define a hotkey by clicking on Settings and Hotkeys. We search for New Task, click the plus icon, and assign the hotkey of our choice. I will go with Alt and T. From now on, we don't even need the command palette anymore for creating new tasks. Pressing Alt and T opens a dialog window where we simply type a sentence like buy groceries tomorrow 3 p.m. Hi at home #errands. And TaskNotes will break it down into the task title, the due date and time, the priority, the context identified by the prefix, and a tag marked with the hashtag character. We could already save the task and be done with it. But let me show you the full form first. If we click on Show Detailed Options, we see individual text fields for entering the same information. Now, we can do that manually if we don't want to use natural language input, or we can click on this icon to fill the form with information extracted from our prompt. Additionally, we can link this task to a project. This can be any other task node, but the node needs to exist already. We will see this a little later. And we can add a time estimate for completing the task. Alright, we skipped these icons here. Let's take a quick look before moving on. The blue dot next to each icon indicates that there is already a value for the respective property. We set a due date for the task in our natural language input with the first one, and the plugin settings automatically set the scheduled date to the task creation date. The next two icons let us set the task's status. By default this is open, and priority, high in our example. After that, we can define a task's recurrence. We will see that in more detail in the next chapter. The last icon lets us add a reminder, which is a feature that Obsidian does not provide natively and many people were desperately missing. We all have some things that need to be done again and again and again. With TaskNotes, we can easily turn any task into a recurring one using natural language or the built-in interface. We use our new hotkey. For me, remember it is Alt and T, and can type the recurrence pattern directly in the natural language input. For example, pay rent every month. As with a simple task, we can view the details and auto-fill the form. Then we can click the recurrence icon to open the dialog. From here, we choose the interval type: daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, or custom. For custom rules, we define the frequency, interval, and the end condition, which can be a number of repetitions or a date. TaskNotes creates each individual task only when we mark the previous occurrence as done. This keeps our tasks view clean and easy to navigate. If you have been using tasks in Obsidian, you already know that they are quite handy, especially when using the Tasks plugin, which, by the way, can be used in parallel with TaskNotes. But still, they are just text. And while this is exactly what many people need, many others prefer having one node per task. With TaskNotes, we can turn inline tasks or normal tasks into individual nodes with additional functionality and metadata. We can start with a regular checkbox in any node. Let's say we want to remember calling our mother. TaskNotes detects that this is an inline task and gives us a small convert button next to it. We click that icon and TaskNotes creates a new node and converts our inline task into a link to that node. We can then open this node and see that it also contains all the default values we defined in the plugin settings. If we want to add or change any of these details, we hit Ctrl P to open a command palette and click on TaskNotes Quick Actions for Current Task. This opens the list of available actions for this task node. If we scroll down, we will find an entry called Edit Task Details. We click on that one and find ourselves in the Edit Task dialog where we can change everything. The TaskNotes front method then stores all this information. Back in the original node, we can also update the inline task directly by setting the priority, due date, and other details. And because they are now part of the full system, We will also see them in the calendar, Kanban, agenda, or search views automatically, as we will see in a later chapter. This is not just a great way to upgrade existing tasks, but also allows us to use TaskNotes in parallel with our current task management approach. After all, probably not every task needs to have its own note, does it? Sometimes we don't want to scroll through a list of tasks. We want to see where everything stands and perhaps even interact with our tasks while we have a nice visual representation of their status. That's exactly what the Kanban view in TaskNotes gives us. Let's take a look at how it works. To open the Kanban view, we once again go to the command palette via Ctrl+P and click on TaskNotes, Open Kanban Board. This view organizes our tasks into vertical columns, grouped by their status. By default, you will see None, Open, In Progress, and Done. Remember that we can adapt and define our own status values in the plugin settings. We can simply drag and drop tasks to change the status. This is especially useful for tracking and visualizing progress through various stages. Each task card shows the most important information at a glance: the title, due date, priority, and any projects, tags, or context. If we hover over a card, we see these three little dots. Clicking on them opens a context menu with the most frequent actions for a task, including time tracking. You can also open a context menu if you right-click on the card. We can filter the Kanban view by various properties, sort the results, and then save the settings as a custom view. This lets us come back to that view quickly instead of having to go through the filter process again. These filters allow us to focus on specific tasks, for example, all the tasks belonging to a specific project or a specific tag. Once we complete a task, it moves to the last column. We can keep it there for reference or archive it, depending on our workflow. Archiving a task adds a tag to its front matter. Once again, we can then update our view to exclude archive tasks, keeping the Kanban board clean and easy to read. Overall, this view makes it easy to manage projects visually, track momentum, and feel more in control. Some people think in lists, others think in time blocks. TaskNotes supports both. And the agenda and calendar views are perfect for anyone who likes to see upcoming deadlines on a timeline or to plan the days visually. We start with the agenda view. It groups tasks by due date, everything scheduled for today, tomorrow, this week, or beyond. It's a great overview of what is coming up. We can use the filter, grouping, and sorting options to create custom views. For example, we can remove all completed tasks from the agenda view to keep it clean. The plugin also lets us save these views for easy switching between them, just as we have seen on the Kanban board. Under each task, we see relevant metadata like recurrence patterns, due and scheduled dates, and related projects. The colored dot next to a task indicates its priority. I like to move this view to one of the sidebars for easy access without taking too much space. The TaskNotes plugin also comes with its own mini calendar view. Once again, we can open this via the command palette. This is not very pretty or useful in full page view, but once we move it to a side pane, it turns into a compact overview. Now let's look at the full calendar. It works like any modern calendar tool. Tasks appear in the appropriate time slots for their due dates. It also uses the previously defined color codes for task status and priority. We can click on a date to create a task, or hold the Shift key, click and drag to select a time frame. Either way, we get to the already familiar task creation dialog. Dragging existing tasks will reschedule them to a different day or time. No need to open a task manually. The calendar comes with the usual views. Currently, we see the monthly view, and up here, we can easily switch to a yearly, weekly, 3-day, or daily view, depending on what works best for us in any given situation. As with the agenda view, filters let us control what we see in the full calendar view, including or hiding recurring tasks, completed ones, or filtering by tag or project. This can be useful if you want to see only a specific project's tasks, for example. If we already use an external calendar like Google Calendar or Outlook, and I think most of us do, TaskNotes can integrate with it. This means we can see events from other calendars right inside Obsidian, and we can even send tasks from Obsidian to these calendars. As shown in an earlier chapter, we can add external calendars using an ICS feed link. Most calendar applications let us export this link in their sharing or subscription settings. You will have to check it. Once we have this ICS link, we paste it into the URL field, give it a name like private or business or family, and choose a color for its events. We can subscribe to multiple calendars, each with its own color coding, so events are easily distinguished in the combined view. Once added, these events appear on our TaskNotes calendar alongside our tasks. Note that we cannot edit the external event or create an event for the integrated calendar. This is a read-only view of these calendar entries. The TaskNotes plugin doesn't just store tasks, it helps us manage our time around them. With built-in time tracking and estimates, we can plan better and see exactly where our hours go. When creating or editing a task, we can set an estimated time to complete it. This helps us plan realistically and avoid overloading our day. We can easily track how much time we spend on a task. To do so, we right-click on it in our calendar or agenda view and click on Start Time Tracking. This will add or update the property time entries in the task node with the start time and description. And if we stop time tracking again, it will add the end time too. The plugin creates such an entry every time we track time like this or with a Pomodoro session, as we are going to see a bit later. We can see the total time spent on a task on the respective task card in the Kanban or agenda views. For those of us who work best in focused bursts, TaskNotes includes a built-in Pomodoro timer. It's flexible, integrates with tasks, and helps us stay on track without drifting into endless work sessions. Remember that we can configure the duration of our Pomodoro sessions, short breaks and long breaks, to match our preferred rhythm in the plugin settings. When creating or editing a task, we can set an estimated time to complete it. This helps us plan realistically and avoid overloading our day. We can easily track how much time we spend on a task. To do so, we go to the command palette and find the entry for Open Pomodoro Timer. This opens the timer in a new node. I like to drag this node to one of the side panels. We define the length of our session and then click on Choose Task. I choose this one and also open the task node itself. Once we click on Start, the plugin adds a property called Time Entries, just as it did for the time tracking feature before. It's easier to read in source mode, so let me switch there. Whenever we pause and resume the timer, the respective values show up in this property. As before, we can see the total time spent directly on the task card. When the timer ends, we can get a notification, a sound alert, or both. There is also a dedicated view with statistics related to our Pomodoro sessions. It tracks how many sessions we had, how long they were on average, and how many we completed. All of this for the current day, the current week, or all time. We also get a list of recent Pomodoro sessions, including the task we worked on during each session. It's a great way to measure focus over time. We have covered a lot in this tutorial, so let's wrap up with a quick recap and a balanced look at the pros and cons of TaskNotes. Once set up, this is a comprehensive and free task management solution directly inside Obsidian based on a single community plugin and not requiring any third-party tools, while still being able to integrate with existing calendar solutions. It combines natural language input, recurring tasks, inline task conversion, Kanban boards, calendar and agenda views, Pomodoro integration, time tracking, and, especially, reminders for our tasks all in one place. On the flip side, we have seen that the initial configuration can be a bit overwhelming since there are so many features. The settings are also rather extensive. Some of the advanced features require careful setup to avoid clutter. The external calendar integration is read-only. Although I have it here under cons, it might actually be a good thing so we don't mess up our actual calendar. And having one node per task will quickly result in a lot of nodes, which is maybe not what everybody wants. If you found this tutorial helpful, give TaskNotes a spin and see how it fits your own workflow. And if you are already using it, I'd love to hear in the comments how you set it up or any tips and tricks you think others should know. And if you want to keep exploring, check out this playlist for more tutorials that can transform your note-taking and productivity in Obsidian. And that's it for today. Thanks for watching and see you next time.